Another significant day in Parliament yesterday. How many times are we going to say that?
I think we've said that word about 300 times in the last year or so.
First time, though, enough MPs were behind Boris Johnson's EU withdrawal bill. So we've moved a step forward. It aims to turn his Brexit deal into law.
However, they rejected then the proposed 3-day timetable in which to debate all those intricate details. So what happens next? That's the important question, isn't it? Joining us now from Westminster is Sonia Sodha from The Observer and Asa Bennett from The Telegraph. Good morning to you both. So Naga was talking there about steps forward. What do you think about yesterday? Asa, we'll start with you. Is it a few steps forward, a few steps sideways and a step back? What's your assessment?
Well, absolutely. It was almost a can-can of manoeuvres, really, as we had one leg forward in the form of Boris Johnson in Parliament agreeing to talk about the deal in more detail. They liked it. At the same time, it seemed that they wanted the Prime Minister to fall flat on his face by then making sure he didn't have the 3-day timetable. Because obviously when you are someone who does not have the time to spare, after all, you are Mr. Deadline, do or die Brexit by October 31st, you need that timetable to work. Otherwise, you're going to get dragged down through the House of Lords and everything else, and having to then be forced to go to EU leaders to say, yes, you know that letter I sent you over the weekend, we may need to do something about it and agree to have Brexit delayed, which will be rather embarrassing for the Prime Minister, but then he can say Parliament forced him into this position.
Sonia, can you see any way out of this other than a general election?
No, I do think we're headed for a general election now. I think losing that timetable that Boris Johnson wanted to push the bill through in 3 days was really, really critical for him. I think a lot depends now on the EU and what the EU come back with. We've got that letter for an extension in with them. Donald Tusk is saying that it's being considered. I think they're going to grant us the extension that we asked for. I don't think the EU wants to be seen to be interfering in UK domestic politics at all, so they will do what they've been asked essentially and grant us an extension to the 31st of January. And then we need to move to look at what Labour will do, because I don't think there's any question. I think Boris Johnson may try and get his a bill through in the next couple of weeks, but I just don't think he's got any chance of doing that. I don't think we should get too overexcited about the fact that the withdrawal agreement bill passed its second reading. If you look at the list of MPs that supported it, there are some MPs on that list, quite a few in fact, who said they would not support this bill going through in its current form. They voted for its second reading because they want to try and amend it and change what it says. So I don't think he's going to get his bill through in the current Parliament, and I think that takes us into general election territory. But the thing for Boris Johnson is that the power to grant him a general election under the Fixed Term Parliament Act sits with the Labour Party. So what the Labour Party is thinking on timing, should they say yes to Boris Johnson if he asks for an election next week? Should they try and make him sit it out for another 3 or 4 weeks? That thinking by the Labour Party is really crucial in determining when a general election might be.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because there's still so much that could happen depending on, who supports what over the next few hours even and days as well. There did seem to be, from an EU point of view, we'll be getting more from our Brussels reporter Adam Fleming, but it seemed that Donald Tusk was suggesting that extension might be forthcoming.
Absolutely. He suggested that it was so easy to agree at the idea of a straight down the line 31st of January maximum deadline as the Ben Act makes the Prime Minister demand, that they could just, send a memo round to the EU27, agree it in writing. But Emmanuel Macron has indicated that he isn't so sure about this. He's very sceptical about a deadline. And so if there was a lack of unanimity among EU leaders, they may have to have a special summit for this in order to really wrangle over the detail. However, some people would suggest maybe this it may not be necessary if it's just to appease the French president's ego, and maybe you just need to smoothen him over and they can move things on. But nonetheless, it seems we will still have some drama on the Brussels end before because they want to show the Prime Minister that they agree with him. They don't just want to throw us delay after delay after delay without any question. They want to get this done just as much as he does.
And in terms of, Sonia, what might happen, I know you mentioned a general election, but in terms of what might happen over the next few days, we're going to be speaking to Ken Clarke a little bit later on. He's one of those who's asking for the discussion around a UK-wide customs union. And there's various other amendments and changes that have been suggested by some MPs. So it's going to be quite a confusing picture, isn't it, around that debate in the House of Commons over the next few days as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the fact that the government didn't get its timetable through means that it's put the bill on pause. So I think you're going to have lots of conversation amongst MPs about what changes they'd like to see to Boris Johnson's bill. They're not necessarily going to get a chance over the next few days to put them to Parliament. I think there are three sort of big amendments that people will be watching. One is MPs who want to soften the Brexit by saying that the UK would stay in the customs union, and we'd certainly see an amendment on that next time the bill gets put forward in front of the House of Commons. The second is an amendment for a second referendum. I think there should be a referendum on this deal. I think it's the only democratic thing to do. But I have to say, I think it doesn't look like the numbers are there at the moment. And the third kind of big change that I think MPs will be trying to make is around, this Boris Johnson's bill creates another cliff edge in December 2020. If there's no free trade deal with the EU by then, we will crash out on WTO terms, on no deal terms. And so MPs will be trying to make changes around that as well. But I think they're going to have to hold fire, because we're not going to see that bill before Parliament now over the next few days, now that MPs have voted down the timetable.
Hey, so I saw quite a vigorous head shake halfway through that. What was that about?
I couldn't resist it. It was just the idea of a second referendum, and really we were not going to be getting the time for that. Instead, we're just going to be an election, and then Boris Johnson, as someone who's more than 10 points ahead of Jeremy Corbyn, can then take this back to the people and get a fresh parliament, a parliament that's ready to do what he wants, and namely, as he says, and he'll be saying many times over during this election campaign, to get Brexit done, be it before Christmas or even on Boxing Day if he wants to really terrify MPs.
Right. So much to digest. Thank you very much for sort of taking the temperature on another Brexit day for us. Sonia, Asa, really good to talk to you this morning.
Not on Boxing Day.